In this episode, we're going to give you Brendan's essential view on what you need to know about transitioning your cat onto a super healthy raw diet. The Pet Health and Happiness podcast from Bella+Duke, keeping you at the cutting edge of pet nutrition, behavior, and health with expert interviews, mythbusters, and more to ensure your pet lives a long, happy, healthy life. Dr. Brendan, welcome.
Good morning. How are you doing?
Oh, it's been a week, Brendan. Let me be honest.
Let's round that week off with a transition into proper raw for proper cats.
And this is really exciting because let's put it in context for everybody who's listening to this. Cats are even more carnivorous than dogs. There is a spectrum. Cats are obligate carnivores. They, therefore, are more likely, in my opinion, Brendan, back me up or criticize this, to be affected by the carbohydrates in all of those processed foods that we discuss so often. If anything, cats need raw diet, low in carbohydrates, even more than those fantastic scavenger dog cousins of them. And Brendan is here today to help us get your cat seamlessly, safely, and effectively onto that raw diet, because we know that cats can be a little bit particular. Brendan.
So, yeah, it's really interesting because we've all had the cat that will, really trough down on one thing and then you try and wean them onto a better diet and they suddenly become really picky eaters. I have lots of clients that will come to me saying, look, I've tried this, but they just will not touch it. And I think they are much more fastidious about what's in front of them. And they really do rely on their sense of smell. We see as soon as you've got a cat with cat flu, their ability, their desire to eat what's in front of them drops massively, just because they can't smell it. So having that aroma can really make a difference. So we're going to talk about that today for helping transition. And also you've got different types of cats. I like to talk about the fish cat and the chicken cat because, usually you've got one or the other and you can't get between the two. It's not strictly true, but it's very much about what they've been used to and what they're comfortable with, what they feel isn't toxic, okay, and they can cope with, and therefore they're safe to eat. And if it smells different from that, they're going to be suspicious of it until they get used to it.
Brilliant, Brendan. It's great to have this in context. So I guess today is your top tips for transitioning your cat onto raw. What would be the first thing that any would-be transitioner needs to take account of, please?
Okay, so take account of what the lifestyle of your cat is. Are they cats that are constantly grazing, catching wildlife, doing all sorts of new foods? It doesn't seem to be a problem for them, because if that's the case for your particular cat, then transition can be a lot more rapid and a lot quicker. So top tip, work out, is your cat fussy or is your cat just, will eat whatever's in front of them, fairly greedy? Okay.
Okay, that's a great one. I can say from this household, Mr. Mustache will pretty much eat anything and will climb on and even have cheese on gluten-free toast if allowed, which he's not.
So we will say to you, because every cat is an individual, you've got to sort of adapt these top tips to what suits your individual cat to get this right.
Perfect.
Okay. So if you've got top tip number one, if you've got a cat that pretty much will eat anything, I would be saying to you, give them the option to just eat one of Bella+Duke's raw options out there. Put small mouse-sized meals down. Don't overload the bowl. This is not kibble that needs to go in the corner of the kitchen, okay? This is put a mouse-sized meal into the bowl, and if they still are a little bit unsure about it, then you can just let it warm to ambient temperature, room temperature, and then give them it again. Okay. So some
Okay.
people will pour a bit of boiling water on it, or even bone broth. I know you guys do some bone broths as well. You can heat that up and just pour that on. Those are really easy things. But firstly, if you put that down in front of them and they demolish it, then that's it. Transition done. You don't need to do the whole 3 days of a third the new food, 2/3 the old food, half and half for 3 days, and then the last 3 days transition is a third the old food, 2/3 of the new food, and then you're sort of all of a sudden you're onto the new food. That transition stuff that we talked about for kibbles from one type to another is just because the holy moly of what's going on within the microbiome being changed and causing diarrheas in a lot of these carb-rich foods. But when you're giving a raw diet, if they're going to eat it and they're going to eat it raw, then actually you can transition pretty much straight on if their appetite allows them.
Okay, so let's summarize section 1, because there are a lot of moving parts in that. The simple thing is, if your cat is quite gourmand, put a mouse-sized meal down in the kitchen. They don't need a huge amount. Let it warm up to room temperature, because temperature is a really important thing. They're used to eating live prey. And if you want to actually release some of those important aromas, putting some warm water, not quite boiling, and or even more tantalizing, some warm bone broth on it will help get that cat over the gate. So that's part 1. Is that correct, Brendan?
That's right. Yeah.
Perfect.
Really. So we're going to move on to part 2, which is the more fastidious cat, let's say. And those can be ones which we have coming to us, maybe older cats that have been on one particular sashayed food for all of their life. And remember, guys, a lot of those foods will be enriched with mechanisms of salts and amino acids and combinations of flavorings to enhance it so that it's attractive to the cat. So you've got to understand that can be a difficult thing to wean them off.
Okay. And can I jump in very briefly, Brendan? I think this is known colloquially in the processed food industry as cat crack, and it's designed to actually keep the cat hooked to a particular brand of processed food. So when you say, oh, my cat just likes it, do know that not only are you giving your cat a healthier food, getting it onto raw, you're actually helping to break an unhealthy addiction. So, Brendan, sorry to interrupt, please continue.
So you're absolutely right. Look, addictions, they affect us all. Okay, we get addicted to sugar, we get addicted to caffeine. Don't calm down. I wasn't going to say anything more. It is just it was literally just, there are certain foodstuffs that will drive us back to replenish those, and we need to be aware that sometimes cats can be addicted in that way. So some of those will need that weaning process to say, okay, for 3 days, you're going to need to just mix in some of the really great new food, okay, to 2/3 of the old food, but keep it to small meals. Do it, always look at mouse-sized meals, okay, because really, unless you've got a lion in your kitchen, okay, and you're going to bring down an antelope, I think really, our cats are only so big, little desert creatures, love little prey, and therefore keep to little mouse-sized meals.
Okay.
Mix that across 3 days on the third old, 2/3 new, 3 days half and half, 3 days a third of the old food to 2/3 of the new, okay, and then at the end you'll be just moving straight onto the food. And that is all about getting the cat used to the odor of the new food is safe, They're not going to have problems. They're not going to suddenly keel over. They're not going to start vomiting or anything like that, because they're really suspicious of new things.
Okay, so that's basically 9 days for a new cat life. So 333. We're going to put a guide in the show notes for that to make it really easy. But to recap, if your cat's a little bit more tricksy, a bit more fastidious, what we're going to do is have 3 days with 1/3 new food, 2/3 old food. 3 days half and half. 3 days 2/3 new food, 1/3 old food. Then you should be transitioning across. And I guess were we to throw a little bit of extra bone broth into the whole process, what might just cement it, correct?
Absolutely. And those are back to, underlying all of this is that cats' taste reflects what they can smell. So if your cat has any flu symptoms, any blocked nose, remember just to give them a bit of a steaming first can really help just to loosen up that mucus and allow them then to smell the foods that are in front of them.
Okay, so we've moved into brand new territory here. We're transitioning cats and you're going to steam it before you feed it. Brendan, talk us through that.
Okay, so 2 things. You can steam the food to allow some of the vapors to come up from it. So what we do is we just basically heat the bowl. Okay, you create a little bit of boiled water, let it cool so it's not boiling. Okay, classically coffee hot, so 70 degrees. Okay, if you've got one of those little coffee heater things that
Okay.
there, and you can just pour that into the bottom of the bowl, put the raw on it, and it just enhances the vapors coming off that food. Okay,
Perfect. Okay.
the other thing for your cat is that if they really have a bung up nose, to steam them safely, okay, just like you holding a towel over a bowl when you're really bunged up, what you can do is place your cat into a cat carrier.
Yes.
Place a bowl of boiled water, okay, boiling water, into a bowl on the outside of that cat carrier. It's creating vapors and steam off that. And literally you put a towel over the whole basket and that for no more than 2 to 3 minutes, keeping an eye that they're not distressed, but they will then breathe in the vapors, the steams, you'll see them suddenly produce lots of mucus around their mouths and nose. You can literally wipe that away and it will clear them. And all of a sudden these cats will start to eat much more readily because they can smell the foods.
This is absolute gold. I love this, Brendan. Wow. Great stuff. Should anybody be considering some essential oils with that, or is that just a step too far?
So I always say with essential oils, you must make sure that your cat is able to cope with those. Never put them in a situation where they can't escape from if you're going to add essential oils. So a lot of people use things like Orbis oil. Okay, please don't use Vicks. There's lots of nasty things in some of these preservatives, the phenols and stuff that can actually cause problems with some cats. So just really think about if you're going to offer anything to a cat. Steam is just so easy to use without necessarily adding loads of stuff that could cause your cat distress. So I would say if you are going to use any of the essential oils, steam them first and then put a few drops onto a handkerchief or something like that. Put it into their favorite cat bed. If they will not go anywhere near those oils, don't use them.
Okay, so from a safe perspective, just to recap, you're probably best off simply steaming the cat and not even going near essential oils. This is part of another project for another time.
Yeah.
For the sake of transition, we've covered what to do if your cat is quite gourmand and not fussy, what to do if your cat is fussy. We use the 9 days for a new life approach, a third, a third, a third, or third, a half, a third. And you may wish to steam your cat additionally. Is there anything else we should be addressing in this, Brendan?
In this top tip, I think we also need to then move on to that bone broth discussion, because actually I would say another top tip in this session is bone broths can be really, really great for enhancing your cat's digestive system, getting them ready for the food that's going to be placed down in front of them. We all know that cats will often investigate things to drink quite readily. And again, because it's generally warmed, getting a little bit of that bone broth, just an egg cup amount even, can be really useful just to put into the dish up to 30 minutes before you're going to feed them. And that really can just get their whole system ready for the food that's to come. It's almost like them chewing on a bone, for the dog situation, that sort of enhances their wanting to digest and eat more food.
Yeah, because obviously this starts releasing all the stomach acids. It whets their appetite.
And gets their microbiome sorted as well. You knew that you wouldn't get through one of these without me talking about
I was waiting for it. I was waiting for it.
Microbiome, they're my go-tos.
Brilliant. I'm with you all the way there. Golly, we've actually covered some really, really nutrient-dense information here, and I've certainly learned something about steaming your cat. Brendan, is there anything else we need to cover?
I think that probably will get 90% of cats over the line. There's one last moment, okay, that we need to just spend on something called Neophilic cats.
Okay.
Cats that they will get bored of a flavor quite quickly. So they sort of really desire to seek out a new source. It's almost like they are a bit of zoopharmacognosy. They're looking for something else to fill a nutrient gap, if you like.
Interesting. Interesting.
So we sometimes see these cats will, they'll eat chicken maybe for 2 or 3 days, and then all of a sudden they won't eat chicken anymore, and they'll want to move on to rabbit, or they'll want to move on to beef, or they'll want to move on to fish, and they will keep cycling. And so be aware when you're feeding your cat, if they seem great for 2 or 3 days, and then, or even some, I've got one client that's got one, literally they'll have a meal and that's it. They won't eat the same meal twice, which is really frustrating if they've opened a pack and they've only got, they've got another half at least to go. But ultimately, have a think. If your cat has that desire for a new food, you may need to have different sourcings of foods in the fridge that you can move from one to the other. Don't be worried about it, but just go through that cycle. Many, it's like 3 days and you'll need to think of a different flavor, do for 3 days, move to a different flavor. And
well, that's perfect, because we've produced our launch of cat food, as you know, because you very kindly helped overlook some of the recipes, well, all of them, is basically, it's a cycle of flavors to deal with exactly this. So just to summarize, everyone, we've covered how to transition your cat. If your cat is just happy and gourmand, if it's fastidious, if there's an element of cat flu going on, you might need to steam it. And do you have a neophilic cat? I think we've covered all of those, Brendan. And frankly, this has been absolutely awesome. Thank you. If you are transitioning your cat and you've got feedback for Brendan and myself, please put your questions in the comments below. We'd love to address these for you. And don't forget to come and join the Bella+Duke Raw Feeding group for both dogs and cats. We're all about the pet wellness. It's super welcoming, and you are entirely welcome. Help us to help you. Keep giving your questions, and we can all grow together. Brendan, thank you so much.
Great. Pleasure to be here.